Okay, so hello folks, Michael Anthony here with the Exceptional Life podcast, and I have a very special guest with me here today, with me virtually, and in fact, she is our first official guest of this podcast, so I'm really excited about it. Her name is Robin Nickell, and she is the owner of Mindful Mechanics, which you can visit at mindfulmechanics.org. Is that correct? Right?
That's correct. You got it.
Yeah. So, Robin, thank you so much for being available today, for joining me. I'm really excited to have you on.
It's such a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give the folks a little background, I actually had a chance to work with Robin in a group meditation series she did for a company that I work for full time and a couple other partner companies. And what was it, 8 weeks long or 9 weeks long?
We ended up doing 11.
11. Okay. It was 11.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was once a week. It was great. And as soon as I did Robin's first guided meditation, I was completely drawn to her energy. I really resonated with her. And so that's why I asked her to join us today. So yeah, thank you, Robin. That was great.
Thank you for connecting. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought a good way to get this kicked off today was maybe if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and kind of how your journey led you to mindfulness training and meditation.
Yeah. It's a long story. I'll try and make it somewhat brief.
Sounds
but
good.
I am the daughter of a Pentecostal minister. And Shirley MacLaine studying existential sort of metaphysical mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a really complicated spiritual background, one might say.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And so I've kind of toyed with spirit and consciousness since I was a little girl. And then, long story, a little shorter, my father developed various forms of dementia, which, as we all know, sort of attacks the brain. And at that same time, I was going through a really yucky divorce. Not that any of them are like delightful. But so I had gone from being a stay-at-home mom, raising two boys who at that time were 2 and 4, 24/7, to being divorced, a single mother, having like 60% custody of my kids, a father that was just sliding downhill cognitively really quickly. And I was falling into absolute, seesaw of depression and anxiety. And I never really experienced that before. And the only way I know how to describe it is it feels like being underwater in your life all the time. Like you can kind of hear the noise above you, but you just can't get to it. Either that or I'm like thrashing around. Someone's trying to save me and I'm like bringing them down with me. And that's kind of how my life was in that moment. And I luckily had this incredible girlfriend who was like, go back to yoga. You got to go back to yoga. And I found that the only time I could really feel a sense of peace and joy again, like that really resounding peace and joy, was in Shavasana, which is our meditative state after our physical practice. So again, I had another girlfriend who was like, I'm going to yoga teacher training. Like, you need something. You should go do this. And I was just immediately like, sign me up. I don't care what the school is, who the teacher is, I'm going. And I went, and part of our study was that we had to meditate every single day. And it cleaned out so much of my emotional closet. I say to some people, I warn some people, if they come to meditation in a really disrupted time of their life, it can be really jarring because it's kicking everything up.
Yeah.
Because we stuff a lot of our emotional garbage so that we can function through the day. And meditation is like, no. Here it is. We're going to take a good look at it. We're going to unpack it. And then we're going to move it to the side and really heal it. But, I was going through all of that, like it was coming up. And at first I was like, this is too much. Like, this is awful, you know?
Yeah.
But there's peace on the other side of that and clarity. And, you know, so that helped me through that period. But then also, as I was studying meditation and trying to figure out what it was doing to me, I came upon all this research that talked about how regenerative it is for the brain. So of course, you know, my beloved dad is at this point barely recognizing anyone in the family. He's in a home. And I could not satiate my appetite for knowledge with that. I had to do mindful-based stress reduction training. And I flew to New York and got certified under Ishta Yoga for meditation certification for teaching. Studied, you know, neurobiology, and just wanted to know everything I could about how it might be a preventative medicine for other people so that they could avoid the fate that my father had endured. And so that's kind of how I came into it. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty meaty. And then I took that knowledge. The first place I took it was to a place called Safe Place and Rape Crisis Center, which is a company called Spark here. It's an organization called Spark here in Sarasota. And I went to work with the women that were in the safe house. So these were women that had fled, oftentimes with like nothing but the clothes on their back and their kids in a car seat. So talk about people that were really in desperate need of some peace. And so we created a little foundation, a yoga foundation for them. And I went in to teach with the women, and it was incredibly gratifying.
That's
amazing.
When
you hug a woman's neck and she's like, that's like the first time I've felt relaxed in years, in months, whatever. So I took it there. And then as my dad started declining even more, I had to leave there and started taking it to schools. So taught this was like my major achievement that I was so happy about, taught an entire education system at Manatee Charter School. All of their educators came in for training and then implemented a really simple mindfulness technique for their kids for all of their classrooms. And this is a charter school. These children are usually financially disadvantaged. You know, so that was incredible. So I've had some really amazing opportunities that I'm really grateful for. And now I'm working in the corporate space.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I dig that too, because like I come across people that are never gonna, you know, they're never gonna wander into a yoga studio. They might never seek that modality out in another way. And so it's really cool for me.
That is amazing. So then mindful mechanics. So that I imagine your journey took you to creating that at some point, right? What was that process like?
Yeah. So, I mean, it came about with, I knew I wanted to teach, and I didn't know where I was going to go with it or how it was going to happen. I just had that vision of like, it's a science-based mindfulness, so that we could draw out all of the stuff that I had to battle in my childhood from my dad's religion. Like he was like, that's devil worship. It's weird. You know, we are not, you know, whatever. So I just was like, I want to take all of that out. And if I can show you the quantifiable data about the way it changes your physiology, the way that it alters the structure of the brain, now it's not about all of that.
Yeah.
You know, now it's about the science. Now it's about like, if I had a pill that would do all of that, I'd be a billionaire.
Ain't that the truth? Yep.
So I'm like, just do it. It's free. Just do it. Just try it.
It is amazing. Yeah. How many people get, you know, they hear the word meditation or any sort of spiritual word tied to any sort of practice. They just get closed off. Right. And it's all that conditioning over, you know, I know I was there at some point where you say something spiritual to me, it would just like get closed off. Like I didn't even realize what was triggering that. Right. I didn't know what the underlying beliefs were. And there's so many people kind of in that space. So I love how I remember you sharing the science behind some of the different meditations we did and the brain and the heart. And neuroscience behind all of that. And I thought that was great because I'm also obsessed with learning as much as I can about that, because it really is closing that gap between spirituality and science, which is great, right? So many more people can relate at that point. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. I use the analogy that, there's this cookbook where she cuts up vegetables and she hides it in like cakes, things like that, but it's like made with beets. I'm like, that's kind of what this is. Like, you're getting some spirituality, but it's in the cake of science. And so you're eating it and it's delicious and you don't even know that it's changing awesome. Your spirit, that it's awakening your consciousness.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's great. So how long has Mindful Mechanics been in business now?
I think it's been a couple of years, and it's like I've just sort of done stuff with it, not done stuff with it. We had a big push, and then my corporate career started diverting my attention, the day job. And now it's like, it's kind of got a life of its own. So I've started doing coaching as well with people.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That's mindful based. So, we really unpack your thought patterns, because our thoughts drive our entire lives, right? The way you think completely alters the way you see the world. And so my job is always to, and I always say all the time, one of the best things I got out of meditation was seeing my own bullshit.
Yeah. Yep.
Like
Amen
I needed somebody to turn the light on the BS that was going on in my mind, because we have these subconscious patterns that are running 24/7. 90% of the thoughts we think are the same thoughts we thought yesterday and the day before. Yeah. We are highly programmed robots. And so what I do when I work with people is I sit and listen to them, and then I unpack, obviously I get them in a meditation practice. I'm like, that's not a negotiable. We meditate every day, because that will change you faster than anything I do. Yeah. But we start unpacking those patterns and those beliefs and just rewiring the brain. Like, nope, it's like pulling weeds out of the garden. Nope, that doesn't serve me. It's out of here. I'm planting new stuff.
Yeah. That's great. It's amazing how, and people don't even realize it. Like, I know when I started to notice and become more aware of my own bullshit, right? Yeah. It was like, it blew my mind as I started to understand it more and more. And so many people just don't even realize that they're automatically going through their days subconsciously, reacting and getting triggered and saying the same things and talking the same way and thinking the same way. And it's just, it is mind blowing when you start to become aware of that, right? It still blows my mind.
Yeah. And I tell people too all the time, like, it's a little terrifying, because once you wake up, you're like, oh, I have to catch myself all the time, because you hear it now. Like, you're in the shower and you're in the middle of like a whole court drama with you and someone who you're supposed to be arguing with, and you're giving your whole closing arguments. And I'm like, am I seriously doing this with my life? Like, okay, I think we're going to switch patterns here and think about something else.
Absolutely. It's almost like you start to develop that metacognition, where you can step outside of your mind for a second. And you're like looking at yourself like, all right, settle down. Like, you're thinking and you're just going off in the left field here. Like, you're standing in the shower at the moment, like enjoy the shower and bring yourself back. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the jewel of it all, is just realizing that you're not your thoughts, right? You're the watcher. You're the awareness of your thoughts. And so as that awareness, you can change that pattern.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it's amazing how science is able to back this stuff up too, which I just love. And so people can't really, they can't really back away from it. I mean, I guess they could, but the proof's in the pudding, right? And if they give it some time and practice it, they'll make those realizations too.
Yeah, 100%.
So as far as the clients that you're working with, are you seeing frequent common themes with limiting beliefs and conditioning that your clients have?
I was curious there's nothing personal about the human experience. We're all doing the same stuff. We're all experiencing shame and unworthiness and, jealousy and lack mentality and competition. It's all the same stuff. Yeah. So I always tell people, like, just cool it. Like, we're all a mess. Yeah. We're all doing the best we can. You're going to awaken to different levels of awareness, but we're all human beings, right? Mm-hmm. If you cut me off in traffic and you slam on your brakes and my kids are in the car, my nervous system's going to react. Mm-hmm. It does what human beings do. The amygdala gets triggered. I sense danger, blood pressure rises, heart rate increases, and I start thinking, because all those chemicals are shooting through I start thinking that I want to punch you in the face. Now, the level of awakening is, do you do it? Do you resettle? Do you return to homeostasis quickly? That's what the practice does, right? Mm-hmm. It helps us reset our balance faster than we would. We don't hang on. We don't gnaw that bone, and hang on to it. But we still have responses. Mm-hmm. We're still human beings. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a level of awakening I haven't experienced yet that you don't respond at all and you don't have any emotional triggers, but I'm not quite there. Yeah.
But I feel you. Yep.
Yeah, but I do know I reset faster, right? I get back to, I don't unpack and live there.
Yeah. And I remember, and I know you and I talked about Dr. Joe Dispenza, who we both adore, right? And I remember him making a comment in one of his talks that he gave about that reaction time, the emotional reaction time, right? You losing your temper or not. He mentioned that his interpretation of emotional intelligence was shortening that reaction time. So like, you're always going to feel it, but how quickly can you get out of that back in that coherent state, making yourself feel good again, right? Thinking of something that makes you feel grateful or whatever, and forgetting about the guy who just cut you off. Yeah. So I always thought that was a great interpretation of how he put it, right? Because you're going to always still get those triggers on certain things in your life, and that's part about being human, right? You have the amygdala to protect you in case a tiger is chasing you or a car is speeding towards you and you got to jump out of the way. It's there so you react, but being able to control that reaction afterwards and how long you linger around or dwell on what just happened, I guess, is the key, right? Yep.
That's the benefit of the practice. I mean, and aside from robbing us of lots of time, it robs us of health, because we know that those chemicals are really disruptive to our physiology. And so we look at it like, I look at people that are angry, that spend a ton of their time angry. And I'm just like, dude, if you could see what you were doing to the inside of your body, you would definitely find a way to change that.
Yeah. I am so glad you brought that up, because that was kind of one of the reasons that I found, meditation and mindfulness and breathing exercise. I originally started with breathing exercises. I trained in the Wim Hof breathing method. Yeah. I did his 10-week online course, and I couldn't believe the shifts I found from the breathing, which started to build an awareness within me that led me to doing meditation and mindfulness. And I don't even know what was my point here. What it was something.
Oh, you were saying, because I was talking about anger.
Yeah. So and how it affects your health, right? How it can create disease, right? All the anger you hold on to, all the grudges, being upset and full of anxiety all the time. So I was having some physical health issues, and I was working on nutrition in different areas with that. And then I was starting the breathing, but it wasn't until I really opened up and moved into practicing with meditation and mindfulness and other modalities that I realized how much of my own stress and, my own anger and things I was holding on to from the past that was really driving that, the stress response of my body. And I think it had a lot to do with the different health conditions I have, because I've pretty much reversed all of them. And some of that was with nutrition and stuff, Beautiful. Which is important. But I felt like the mindset and some of the underlying limiting beliefs and conditioning I had played a huge role in some of the, the disease and dysfunction of my body. And so I think it's so important that people, like you said, if they only knew what they were doing internally, maybe they would think twice about holding on to that grudge or hating their neighbor or whatever. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I'm on the flip side of all this, obviously people take on these practices, or they're working with you and your clients are working with you. What type of transformations have you seen, and how quickly do you see some people making transformations?
Everyone is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so it depends on how much we have to weed.
Yeah.
But some things are really quick. I mean, I've worked with people who've been in, several year unhealthy relationships that have been out in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, well, I've been doing this for like ever. Like, this is just the thing that I do. And I was like, yeah, but is that like really serving you? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, we talk about what's not working, but then more importantly, and this is just the magic of mindfulness. And I'll give you an example. We'll take relationships as an example. So if I'm working with someone who's in an unhealthy relationship, we talk about what we don't like for just a little bit, because you don't need me to tell you what's not right. But then we talk about, more importantly, we talk about, what do you want? Like, if you could just order it up. And, I fully admit I did this with my husband.
Oh, yeah.
I divinely ordered him up to a T. I mean, I even got some bonus package I didn't even ask for. But like, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I sat down, and I do this with my clients that are looking for relationships. I sat down and I just wrote down as if it were happening, right? Abram Hicks. Mm-hmm. So we don't do it in a want, we do it as it is.
Yep.
Right? So I wrote it down as if it were happening now, what that relationship looked like, from how I was able to serve in that relationship, how I was able to love, and then how he was able to love me, how I felt in that relationship. And it was tangible, just like safe and delicious, that kind of stuff. And wrote down the qualities that were really important to me, like the non-negotiables. I needed somebody who was interested in spiritually developing. Mm-hmm. They had to be able to hold my hand, because like I'm running towards that enlightenment. I'm running towards that wholeness state. So I needed someone that could go on that journey with me. And I just wrote it all down. It probably sounds crazy, but I recorded it in my phone. I listened to it every night before bed and every morning when I woke up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Within about a month, he showed up.
That's so cool.
And it was like lightning. Like, I was like, oh, I recognize you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew him from high school, but we'd never really been familiar. But like, I was like, oh, like that's what the divine sent me. It's exactly what I ordered. So we do that kind of work, and it's really helpful, and it's pretty swift. For an example, like if you're in a bad relationship and you're looking for a good one, there's that block. Mm-hmm. You stay in that relationship. It's basically like you're telling the universe, I'm not really ready. Like, I'd like a better relationship, but I'm not really ready. Mm-hmm. So we do this exercise, and it helps people weed out the stuff that doesn't work. Yeah,
that's cool. That's awesome. So, so obviously you use some different types of practices in coaching your clients, other than just, meditating and mindfulness. So it sounds like some forms of journaling and visualization. I know we did one in that series that I did with you, was it conscious daydreaming?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones, actually, because I'm a big fan of doing the visualizations. I love to do those. So is there any other practices that you implement in your coaching?
Well, I do some Reiki work. So I'm Master Reiki certified. So I do some Reiki work, but a lot of it is really about our beliefs and how can we get in touch with them. And that's through things like journaling, and that's through meditating, and that's through manifestation exercises. Mm-hmm. And that, I saw you did a cool segment on the RAS, the reticular activating system.
Yeah.
And that manifesting is really that. It's just really activating our RAS and saying to that filter, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. So if you could filter out all the other stuff and let that come through, that would be great.
Isn't that amazing though, how that works? I mean,
it is amazing. And it's science, right?
Yep.
But I think what's interesting is that science is the new language of mysticism.
Yep.
Right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, even in science, we don't know why the heart beats on its own.
Exactly.
We don't know why our blood pressure regulates on its own. We don't know why those things happen. Our bodies are still completely mysterious, even to the most brilliant scientific minds.
Yep.
And so, I'm like, whatever, we'll have the science conversation. It's still beautiful and mysterious, but we'll have that conversation to get there.
Yeah, it's really like just like you said, it's like science really is spiritual, right? At its deepest core, because we don't know. And our science is based on what we know right now, which could change.
Oh, of course.
The laws of physics and all that, like any of that could really change at any point in time. And we don't know if it will or not, or if we discover something we were unaware of before. And it's just it does become so mystical, even if you try to approach it from a science perspective.
Yeah.
But the reticular activating system. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, leeches used to be a scientific process, right?
Huge.
Medical process. And at that time, that was normal, science-based. And
it worked, right? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all great stuff. So if you have somebody who's first coming in and they're interested in making some changes in their life, maybe they never considered meditation or mindfulness or anything like that, maybe even a bit skeptical about that stuff, right? What would you say are some things they could implement where they're going to see some results like pretty quickly? Is there any certain techniques or practices you like to use with people like that may not be familiar with mindfulness or be a bit skeptical?
Same way you started, breath.
Yep.
The breathing techniques are the gateway drug to meditation and mindfulness.
Yep. That's such a great way to put it.
They really are, because I can get anybody, pretty much anybody, I can talk them into let's just chill for a second and watch our breath, right? Let's count to 4 on our inhale. Let's exhale for 4. Let's hold it out for 1. Let's do that for 2 or 3 minutes, because they'll feel physical changes. Yeah. We know that that's going to, regulate the nervous system, and they're going to get that sense of calm that they were looking for. And even there's an awareness in that. Like when the body resets to homeostasis, people feel that, and they get it. They're like, no, yeah, that's pretty rad. I would like more of that, please. How do we get more of that?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so you definitely implement breath work, some breath work with clients. Do you do that with most clients, or do you just kind of feel them out?
Yeah, and it's pretty much, every session I starts the way you and I started. Yeah. We sit down and we get centered. We take 3 to 5 rounds of deep breaths. We focus on our heart center. We set an intention. Yeah. Even that alone gets us back into that state of awareness. And so that is for every single person I meet with. I do that. And it's amazing, because every single time, I'll sit down in this situation, because I do Zoom meetings with my clients, and they'll sit down and they're like, so I had this day, and I'm like, okay, let's wait a second before we go. Let's sit down, and then they come out of it and they're like, oh man, thank you. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, now we can really do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're doing this. I can't get you focused on what the real root of it is. You're just talking to me about symptoms.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about the cause. But when you get centered, you can get focused on oh, wait a minute, I found the root. We can yank it. I was mad at the weed up here, but we need to get the root. So yeah, breath work, man. Breath work is great.
Yeah. And I mean, it really is a part of meditation, right? Like, I mean, you start to, a lot of times you focus on your breathing, even just beginning a meditation.
Yeah.
I know most of the meditations I do, I'm focusing on my breathing first and foremost and kind of go from there. So yeah, it is a powerful way for people to see that proof in the pudding, like immediately, right? Wow, I feel good just from breathing for 30 seconds in a little bit different manner and focusing on it. Yeah, that's cool.
Parasympathetic nervous system shows up, does its thing, works its magic.
Yep. And so these practices are, I mean, they're obviously great for everyone for a number of different reasons, but even for those people who are looking for like the edge or performance, better performance, being more creative, having more ideas. I mean, obviously it's for them too, right?
100%. Yeah. And in fact, all of the really talented artists that I know all have a meditative practice. There is, I don't know how to say this. We spend a lot of time working with our emotional brain, right? We're reactive in nature. So our emotional brain is kicked up. And the prefrontal cortex, which is like the CEO of our brain, it's the one that makes all the brilliant decisions. It's the one that calculates risk and cause and effect and things like that. When you're running with your emotional brain, this brain works on electricity, right? So, and it's pretty efficient. This is all energy, everything. Your thoughts are energetic patterns. So if we're activating our emotional brain, then the prefrontal cortex, that smart brain, doesn't have as much energy. It's not as activated. It's kind of muted. And so I always say, if you can just like shut that down a little bit and just be, you activate your brilliance. Yeah. You activate that. When you get out of that chaotic state, you get connected to that infinite intelligence. That unbound potential, infinite intelligence. And, it's not there 24/7. I wish it was. Yep. But you can access it. And it's a beautiful thing.
And it's like that flow state essentially, right? Where you just, you're everything's coherent. You're firing on all cylinders, creative, performing well. It's it's an amazing feeling to be in that flow state. I know it well. I train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so I like to do, I do some different techniques for training, obviously some breathing and whatnot, but even on the way to the school driving, I'm doing affirmations, and then I sit in the car and kind of close my eyes and set intentions on how I'm going to perform, focus on my breathing a little bit there before I even get into the school. So yeah, I think even for people looking for that extra edge, that performance, this really is, it's almost like a superpower. These practices is the way I like to put it. Like, as you get better at it, it's going to be reflected in your life, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at it now with professional athletes, like this is being implemented in the NBA, in the MLB. You get coaches that understand the power of visualization. Yeah. And so they're implementing that. Like, you go out and you visualize yourself making that shot, hitting the ball. It's a homer. It's a homer. My son is in a travel ball team, and his coach is super rad, and he's an ex-MLB player. And he and I got in a conversation, and he was like, "Oh my God, you teach mindfulness?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh my God, I'm a huge believer." And he's like, "Can you talk to the boys? Can you?" Because he's like, "Imagine if you could get your hands on 11-year-old brains and implement that there and speak it in their language." Like, we're not talking about like spiritual growth. We're talking about how to hit the ball better, how to be present to catch that pop fly, but we're teaching them visualization. We're teaching them the power, because what we've learned, and this from Joe Dispenza, is that the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality, right? And so it's making those same neurological connections that it does when we're actually performing the physical feat. So
that's amazing.
You're hardwiring your brain for performance when you visualize. everyone, I mean, almost everyone does that anyway. I mean, professional speakers and things, they run through that visualization of them. They, you know, they practice as well, but they visualize themselves. They visualize the outcome, like performing well and having a great response. I mean, it's, and some people are doing this all the time and aren't, they don't have the language to say what it is. Right? They're just like, I'm daydreaming. I'm like, no, you're consciously daydreaming. And that's awesome.
Absolutely. And it's, I know when I first started hearing about those studies and the science behind firing and wiring neural patterns just from thought alone, and it being the same patterns that fire if you're doing the activity. I mean, that was like mind blowing, right? And so I've been a big fan of visualization just from that perspective since I learned that. And it's just fun to do, right? Like, who wouldn't like to sit there and visualize doing amazing things, or the sport of their choice in hitting that home run or whatever, right? Or public speaking or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna think thoughts. They might as well be great ones. Right. Like, why think the bad ones, right? Which a lot of people do, and they're doing it unconsciously, unfortunately. But and that's the other great thing I love about it, is because if you do these thoughts so often, like the good thoughts, the empowering thoughts, the confidence, you know, whatever, it's like they eventually start to sink into your subconscious, where you're just naturally happier and more joyful and more confident, more just being the way you want to be, because you've thought on it so much. It's like, wow, I am just naturally happy now. What happened? It's amazing. Well, the subconscious picks up on the patterns of thought that we have in our conscious mind. So we have the opportunity to really, and once we do that, that's what I tell people. I'm like, I know it's laborious to catch you on your own bullshit every time you have a bad thought and restate it, right? Like, you know, you're working with someone and they're just like, I'm never going to be good enough at my job. And I'm like, is that accurate? I don't think that's accurate. Like, you're amazing at your job and you're only getting better. So every time you think about that, every time you have that crappy thought, you go, nope. And sometimes, and I told people, I'm like, sometimes I say it out loud. I'm sure people think I'm crazy, but sometimes I'll have a thought and I'll be like, nope, we don't do that here. You know, and I reinstall the new program. And, you know, that's how we program the subconscious mind, is by having that conscious thought over and over and over again, because that's the program that it runs. It's going to run in your spare time. Like, if you want to work more efficiently, spend a couple of months installing the good programming, and then the subconscious mind will like take it over for you.
It's awesome.
Right. And then the RAS kicks in, it starts helping you. It starts letting you see opportunities and synchronicities and all that jazz.
Next thing you know, you're living an exceptional life, right?
I mean, exactly.
It's funny because it sounds so simple, but it is simple, right? It might take you a while to recondition yourself, right? With the thought pattern stuff, but it is so powerful. And if people just realize that, they could be turning their lives around, right? Everybody could be turning their lives around and have a better world to live in. So that's awesome. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick.
Hit it.
All right. So my little voice booth gets a little warm in here with all the insulation.
I know, I have my fan on in here. I'm like, I hope that's not too loud.
I don't think I hear it on my end.
It's warm.
Okay. Just a couple other things here. How are we on time? Oh, 4:44. It's 4:44 on my end. That's like a synchronicity. Yep, I love it. That's great. I was curious too, just on if you don't mind sharing some of your own daily practices that you like to do every day. Do you have kind of like a morning routine, an evening routine, anything like that?
Yeah, so my kid, quarantine and the kids being home, and then the kids going back to school, and I got half my kids home homeschooling and half of them are going back full time. So there's no real routine right now. But I do breath work all day long. I would say to you that breath work for me that's meditation. Some may argue nuance on that, but it's conscious, controlled awareness
Yep.
So to me, that's meditation. So I do that all day long. And I mean all day long. I am a deep belly breather. My husband could probably tell you, like if you're sitting next to me in bed watching TV, you could probably hear me going,
yeah,
just breathing over and over. But it's great for me. I am a type A person. Like I'm not built for chill, just genetically.
Yeah.
And so this is a life-saving technique for me. So awesome. I am constantly breathing. And then my meditations change. Some days I meditate for 5 minutes. Some days I meditate for a half an hour. It just depends. And, I'm studying, which I highly recommend you check out because I know you'll dig it. Deepak's new book, Total Meditation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think you'll like it.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. So it's just talking about how we're meditating more than we think we are. Right? Like when you were talking about being in that flow process, that's a meditative state. You're totally present, totally aware, that's a meditative state. And so we're meditating more than we think we are. It doesn't necessarily always have to happen on a cushion. But I definitely think it should start there because I think like the subconscious mind, right? If we start doing that process intentionally, like we make time, we sit on the cushion, we sit on, we give ourselves that 10, that 20, that 30-minute practice, then you start to find yourself in that state effortlessly. And do you have kids?
Not yet. No, we have a chocolate lab. He's kind of like a kid, but no, not quite there yet.
Yeah, you're too young for kids probably. But yeah, I mean, I noticed it when it was really getting involved in my practice. I noticed how meditative and present I was with my children. Like when you're just, because sometimes when you have small kids and they're all over the place, you're just like, But there are those moments where you're just like really dialed in, and that is part of the meditative experience. It's part of the benefit. But I would say that that's a state. That when you're really connected and present with someone, I'd say that's like a state of meditation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. It's like the practice just carries over with you throughout your day and your life for the most part. And then you start to notice when you're not really in that state, right? Like I know that's happened for me a lot where things will come up and I'm like, wait a second, I'm getting triggered. What's going on? Why did I just get upset or whatever? But the rest of the day, it's like you say, I start to focus on my breathing. I do the same thing. I'll just every 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm taking a few breaths and focused on it. And it feels good to try to be in that state all the time, right? Like it's once you start to experience it, then you kind of always want to be there.
Yeah, I told you that's the ache. It's like the ache is knowing when you're out of it. Yeah. You're like, man, I want to get back.
Yeah, I feel you. So you do you do yoga, you teach yoga as well, and
I teach some yin yoga. I haven't been since quarantine, but before I would teach some yin yoga classes. Yoga has been amazing for me. I've loved yoga, and it's interesting because it's changed so much. Like when I first went to yoga teacher training, I was like power yoga, vinyasa, aerial yoga. Like I just wanted to be as like crazy as like, I'm a pretzel. And as I've gotten older and a little more chill, I like a restorative yoga, like a yin yoga, a nice slow flow, something like that. But it's so adaptive. But it's a great practice. I think yoga should be part of everyone's practice.
Yeah.
Including men.
I started doing it. I'm officially a yoga practitioner. I average probably twice a week. I go with my wife. She got me into it. It's like the Bikram hot yoga.
Yes, I've done it.
It's amazing. I love it. And it's such a great supplemental practice for not only for me as a human being, but for my jujitsu as well. Like,
I bet.
Yeah. So I love it. It's been great. We went the other day. We'll go at 6 a.m., bright and early, and the classes are like around 90 minutes long. So, but it's awesome. I love it. So yeah, I've started doing that, and I love it's like a moving meditation, the whole practice. So I love that aspect of it as well. So it's like a different part of the mindfulness techniques. So I like to implement that.
Yeah. Bikram's cool too, because it's the same sequence over and over. And so you really can get super meditative in that. Because like once you know the flow, then you're just really connecting the movement with your breath.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, it's cool.
I've noticed that. Yeah. I started it before the whole pandemic, or the beginning of the year is when I first started doing it. And even though there was a little bit of gap when they were closed, it's like I could see such a difference in my practice, how quickly I can get into like a meditative state, because I do know what moves are coming next, and I don't got to constantly look around and break my attention. So yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a great practice. I've recommended some of my own buddies who would probably never do it, but I've recommended it to them, because they're dealing with like all sorts of injuries and stress and stuff. I'm like, you should
they need it.
Try yoga. Yeah. So they won't even try the meditation stuff either, but that, maybe one day they'll try it out. So we'll see.
They need a woman to inspire them into class.
Yeah. Well, if it wasn't for my wife, I don't know if I ever would have went. I mean, I definitely appreciated the practice, and I thought it could be a great supplement to my jiu-jitsu, but I just don't think I would have went on my own and tried it.
Yeah.
Just not knowing much about it, but she goes every day and she loves it. So.
Well, good for you, and good for you for being a pioneer and like encouraging other men to do it. And
absolutely. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like it just enhances your life in all ways, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, you want to be a better human being and perform better and feel better, then don't let the ego get in the way, right? Like some guys will be like, oh, yoga, whatever. And so that's what you've got to explain to them. Like, it's not some girly thing or whatever. You become very powerful in this practice. It's going to enhance your life. So
I had one of my really good friends, Eric, who's just like a big dude. He was like an all-state Ohio State wrestler. I mean, he's huge. And my girlfriend and I were like, do yoga. And he was like, okay, yoga. I'm going to go stretch, and then we took him to a class, and he was like, I'm sorry, is down dog a resting pose? Yeah. He was like, that was awful. But he's a yogi now. Like, he loves it.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my wife's even seen, before the pandemic, she saw some of the Pittsburgh professional athletes. She's seen some Steelers, some of the Pittsburgh Pirates in there. She's seen a bunch of them at times. So yeah, even the big tough guys get in there and do it, right? And it makes them tougher. It makes them tougher.
Yeah, it helps condition them. Keeps them from getting injured.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's cool. I definitely love it. I'm going to continue doing it for sure.
Awesome.
So what, you have any exciting plans for Mindful Mechanics or for yourself, coming up? I know things are kind of weird and in flux now, but any exciting plans with the business or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say too much, but I just was invited to become a clinician for a very large workers' comp pain management program.
Oh, nice.
That is implementing yoga, nutrition, like really treating these workers' comp patients like the whole person, to get them back to work,
that's awesome.
to get them back to whole. And I'm so stoked about that.
Nice.
Just finding these opportunities to bring the practice to people who might not otherwise ever engage in it.
Yeah.
To me, that's the most fascinating thing that I can do. Like, I love working with people like you. I love working with my girlfriends who have a practice and who are knowledgeable about it and inspired by it. That's super rad too. But like, taking something to someone and it's a completely foreign language, and then watching that light go on, seeing that transformation, just like, use me, universe. Like, awesome. Just use me, like, as much as you can. So I'm really just trying to say yes to as many opportunities to serve as I possibly can. And just really continuing my education and just trying to bring the data to make it accessible, and trying to uncover, new techniques, because everyone's different, and not every meditation is right for everyone. Like, you loved our conscious daydreaming. For somebody else, like, they're really moved by a chakra meditation, or, just a full body scan. And so just practicing my craft and just saying yes to serve.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So if people were interested in finding out more about you or connecting with you, there's your website, mindfulmechanics.org. What other ways could they reach out to you or contact you?
That's probably the easiest way. I am like kind of cutting off social media.
Yeah.
At least until the election's over.
Sure. Understandable.
Yeah, the energy around it is getting really dark, and I had to uninstall Facebook completely from my phone because I cannot allow it to have a seat at the table in my life right now. I'm even taking like large Instagram breaks. But LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm like pretty much stuff like this in my website.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody interested in Robin, check out mindfulmechanics.org. Her contact information's there. Yeah, I guess, well, we're almost to the hour here, and I did have one other question for you. What would be your definition of living an exceptional life?
Being awakened.
Nice.
Just being awakened. Everything is solved from there, because you really get to see the meaning of everything, enjoy the nuance of it. Yep. I told my girlfriend the other day, like, a lot of us, because, technology, this is amazing that you and I have connected through this technology, that we met through another corporate gig, and here we are, and this is so beautiful and so incredible. But like, in a lot of ways, technology has distracted us so intensely. All the dings and the buzzes and the emails and the texts and the alerts and the this, that, the other. It's like, a lot of times it's like we're in this car, like we're in a Maserati just redlining it, like looking out the window, and that's our life, and it's just this blur.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to go slow.
I agree.
I just want to take off my shoes, walk in the grass, and go slow.
Stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, because when you do, like, this stuff happens. Yeah. You get to connect with people. You get these enriching, like, beautiful moments. And so that to me is an exceptional life.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I love it. And I totally resonate with everything you said too. I mean, I like to do device fasting a lot.
Yeah.
Where I'll turn my phone off for the whole weekend. I'm not checking work emails typically in the evening or even in the morning until I do some of my morning routines and stuff. You. So I've really put work into that, because that was tough, especially in the beginning, and it was so easy to get distracted. So yeah, I implemented a lot of different ways of just stopping myself, being more present and not being distracted by the dings and the vibrating phones and all that stuff. So
yeah. And it's really against the societal grain, because like right now we are just glamorizing, like almost worshiping busyness.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, how busy are you? I'm busier. Like, so booked. I'm so busy. Like, that's cool, but no one's really going to give a shit at the end of the day. Like, when you're taking your last few breaths, no one's going to be like, she was so busy.
So many things at once. Yep.
They're going to be like, that time that you sat down and like connected with me and really showed up for me. Absolutely.
That's such a great point. Yeah. There was somebody, I forget his name. I could see his face in my head. He said this quote that I wrote down at one point. I have it somewhere, but it was something along the lines of, like, 98% of the people in this world are spending 98% of their time working on things that do not even matter, because they have no idea why they're here in life.
Yeah.
And that just stuck out to me, because it's like, I
that
don't know.
made my heart hurt when you said that.
Yeah.
That literally caused me like tension in my chest.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt the same way. So I wrote it down, and I thought his name was, he had like 3 names in his name. He was an older gentleman with white hair and a beard, white beard, Michael something, or Michael was in the middle name or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was such a great quote that really, it just stuck out, and I wrote it down, and I've actually said it to some people in conversation. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah.
Wait, what?
Think about it. Like, actually think about it for a moment. So, yeah. But, well, hey, we're right here at the hour, and, this was awesome. And I'm so grateful that you took some time out of your schedule to talk to me today. I thought this was great. Really excited to have my very first guest on this podcast. So I would love to stay in touch and, maybe do it again. So thank you, Robin. This has been great.
Thank you, man. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for like bravely and boldly showing up for people and sharing this message. It is the coolest thing ever, and it was such a pleasure, and I appreciate it.